If you use any Geo character, whether it be Ito, Noelle, Ningguang, or Albedo, then trust me, Gorou is your best friend. He's super easy to build, and his first two constellations give him nice quality of life changes that make him pretty free-to-play friendly. Today I'm going to be giving you all the information you need to maximize his effectiveness, whether you're an aspiring Geo main or if you're already a Geo main. This guide will cover your best artifact builds, weapon options, general playstyle tips, and best teams. Without further ado, let's not waste any time and get this guide rolling. To start off, let's take a brief minute to talk about Gorou's strengths and weaknesses to get an idea of how we want to build him. Overall, he performs his job of buffing Geo characters extremely well, but outside of that he is quite niche and he finds it very hard to fit into other random teams. Between Gorou's skills and passive talents, he provides 2 separate defense buffs and 1 Geo damage buff. These are not nearly as universal as attack buffs or corresponding elemental damage buffs that characters like Bennett or Kazuha provide. More importantly, the biggest things you need to know regarding Gorou's builds are that his Ascension talent provides extra defense scaling to his ability damage, and his elemental skill only provides him with 2 energy particles despite having an 80 energy cost burst. This means we have 2 different ways of building Gorou. The first way is going to be focused purely on defense and energy recharge that I just talked about. By only hyper-focusing these 2 stats, we get a really easy and really cheap build that is accessible for all kinds of players. The other way is of course going to be the iconic DPS impact, where we tell ourselves this character can be easily built as a support, but I'm gonna build him as a sub DPS anyways because that's just what I want. I don't really recommend this build for most players unless you're a big spender and have nothing else to do, but seeing your supports do some decent damage can actually be pretty fun if you're not too worried about meta or efficiency. With that in mind, the artifact stats for Gorou are quite straightforward. In the cheap support build, we have energy recharge or defense percent in the sands, defense percent in the goblet, and defense percent in the circlet. We want to maximize our defense for cheap damage with Gorou's Ascension talent, and you can add ER in the sands if you can't get enough ER in substats or weapon stats. For artifact substats, we want to focus energy recharge, defense percent, and flat defense. It's just as simple as that. And if anyone is interested in the sub DPS build, it's the standard replacement of the goblet with Geo damage bonus and replacement of the circlet with crit rate or crit damage if you have the pieces available. Of course, the crit build will also have a higher emphasis on crit rate and crit damage in substats. As for artifact sets, this is where things get a little more confusing. The pure support build has many different options since we're not always looking for the best damage. The easiest way to build Gorou for useful stats is either going the 4-set Emblem of Severed Fate or any combination of the 2-set ESF, 2-set Husk of Opulent Dreams, and 2-set Archaic Petra. 20% energy recharge from the 2-set ESF is a huge help considering players might have energy problems with Gorou. Otherwise, if you don't have energy recharge and are running a weapon like Favonius Warbow, choosing anything between the 2-set Husk, 2-set Petra, and 4-set ESF is purely preference and depends on whichever set has the best artifact substats. Chances are it's easier for players to get a combination of the 2 sets rather than a full 4-set of ESF, but the 4-set ESF will provide slightly better damage compared to any of the 2-set combos. Next, I want to recommend the 4-set Husk of Opulent Dreams. While it's pretty decent on a pure support Gorou, this is the best in slot for anyone wanting to build Gorou in the sub DPS role. This 4-set provides us the most damage when we're building crit because it makes up for the lack of running a second defense percent piece, and we also get some more Geo damage bonus from it. Last but not least, if you have C4 Gorou and are looking to build him as a healer, we can build any combination of the 2-set Maiden's Beloved, 2-set Husk of Opulent Dreams, and 2-set Ocean Hued Clam. For those who don't know, Gorou C4 allows his elemental burst to heal characters as long as there are 2 Geo characters in the party. This is a really nice change that makes Gorou a little more flexible if you happen to get a C4. Unfortunately, Gorou C4 only heals off 50% of his max defense, which isn't a lot at all, so the 4-set Ocean Hued Clam is not a very efficient pick here, like it is on characters such as Chi-Chi or Kokomi. As for weapons, things are extremely simple. I mentioned that Gorou has huge energy problems, and by far the easiest way to circumvent that is running an energy recharge weapon. That just leaves us with a few options. The best in slot for Gorou himself is going to be the Sacrificial Bow. With an energy recharge stat and the ability to cast his elemental skill twice, this bow is perfect for balancing damage with personal energy needs. Though other supports like Kujo, Sara, and Diona also love this weapon, definitely get this weapon leveled up for Gorou if you have it just sitting around. Next we have the Favonius Warbow, which is extremely similar in value compared to the Sacrificial Bow. This weapon has an even larger energy recharge stat and has a perfect passive for funneling even more energy particles into other characters or even Gorou himself. Having a free-to-play weapon like the Favonius Warbow as one of the best, or if not the best weapon for Gorou is definitely some good news for players without many other options. Outside of these two bows, there really isn't anything else that fits perfectly with Gorou. The last energy recharge option we have is LG of the End, which is still a great weapon, but unfortunately the Elemental Mastery doesn't really help Geo characters at all. If you're building the DPS Gorou build, your best option for pure damage is going to be the Polar Star followed by Skyward Harp. I know these are both 5-star weapons, but a sub DPS Gorou is extremely stat hungry and not easy to build without 5-star weapons, so it really can't be helped. Both of these bows have ridiculous crit stats and passives that really help Gorou, considering you still desperately need to focus energy recharge and defense in artifacts. Alright, so that's everything out of the way in regards to Gorou's build, so let's get into some of the fun stuff regarding Gorou's team suggestions and his specific interactions with other characters. I'm sure I've drilled this point into your head already, but Gorou shines the best when he's surrounded by two other Geo characters, so that's what we're going to do today with his best team. First things first, we need a main DPS character that benefits from both defense and Geo damage bonus. This leaves us with two options in the second character slot, Noelle and Itto. Although not limited to Noelle and Itto as the main DPS characters, these are the two I'd recommend the most because of how well they synergize with Gorou. Next, we need a character that can generate Geo energy for the party. Even Noelle and Itto have energy problems, not just Gorou, so the third slot is extremely important. Our best candidates for energy generation are Albedo, Ningguang, or the Geo MC. Zhongli unfortunately provides an unreliable Geo energy source, making him much less dominant in this sort of team. That is not to say Zhongli is bad per se, because Zhongli is always good and I'm sure a lot of people already know that. Anyways, last but not least, the fourth slot is considered a flex position. There's many things that we can still add to this team and it's up to you to decide what you lack the most. If energy is still a problem and you can't keep your main DPS burst up all the time, we can solve that by adding Raiden Shogun or the Electro MC in the last slot to keep energy levels healthy. If you lack healing or shielding because you're running Itto instead of Noelle, we can add a plethora of healers, but my favorite option is Diona. Diona can provide heals, shields, and even extra energy if you decide to run her on Favonius Warbow. And finally, now that you know some of Gorou's common teammates, let's talk about some of the interactions between these teammates. Specifically, I want to talk about what snapshots and what does not. First up, we have Gorou with Albedo. Albedo is an interesting case thanks to the new Cinnabar Spindle that we just received in the first half of patch 2.3. When it comes to Albedo's elemental skill and C2 effect, both will snapshot Gorou's elemental skill buff, meaning we're always going to want to use Albedo's skill right after using Gorou's skill. Unfortunately, the Cinnabar Spindle lends itself to be a weapon that does not snapshot. So once you leave the field with Albedo, your Cinnabar Spindle passive will not benefit from Gorou's defense buff because Albedo is not actually on the field to receive the buff. Up next, we have Noelle and Itto. Both of these characters are pretty similar in the sense that they convert their defense into extra attack at the moment that they use their elemental burst. This means that the extra defense that they get from Gorou's skill will snapshot and be turned into attack. However, the Geo damage bonus does not snapshot because it's not part of the defense to attack conversion. So for example, if you leave the radius of Gorou's field after using Noelle/Itto burst, you still get to retain the attack from converting the defense buff into attack, but you lose out on Geo damage bonus until you re-enter the radius. Luckily, this isn't as much of a problem since Gorou's burst allows the field to follow your active character. And with that, even though this guide was a little bit shorter compared to my other ones, that's all I have for you today. Since Gorou is a new character, let me know down in the comments below if you got him or not, and if you did, be sure to say where you plan to use him. Anyways, if you enjoyed this guide, be sure to support both the video and the channel by following me on Twitch, joining my Discord, subbing to the YouTube channel, or whatever people do nowadays. Other than that, it's the same as always. I'll see y'all in the next one. Peace.